Okay, I think we're all set and we are recording. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's session. This is Elevate Your Leadership Strategies for Success, and this is the second session in the 2025 ASDA Chapter Leadership Academy. So I'm Kylie Weller. I'm ASDA's Chapter Engagement Senior Manager for Chapter Engagement, and I'm going to help moderate tonight's session along with our speaker, Dr. Craig McKenzie. We're so excited to have you all with us tonight, and this session is designed to help you distinguish between leadership styles, identify the key components to leadership and how it relates to your success as a chapter leader, consider the leadership tactics you'll want to utilize in different situations and how to work effectively with others, especially on your e-boards and in leadership positions in your chapter, and learn how to identify styles of your peers to effectively delegate and again, lead your chapter. So we hope that after this call, you'll plan to schedule a meeting with your boards, with other chairs to share the information that you learned tonight. I know a lot of chapters have one or maybe two people on the call. And in that session include some key highlights, some items for your chapter to discuss. So as you're listening and participating in tonight's session, recommend considering how the information shared threads its way through both this presentation and the work and the goals that you have set for your chapter for this year. So during the presentation, if you do have questions, you can definitely type them in the chat and we'll have some time to answer at the end. And we'll provide our contact information too, so you could always follow up with us in email. So now let me formally introduce our speaker, Dr. McKenzie. Dr. Craig McKenzie is an assistant professor of dental anesthesiology and the director of the Center for Patients with Special Needs at the University of Pittsburgh School of Dental Medicine. After completing a dual DMD and MSED program at the University of Pennsylvania, he trained in dental anesthesiology at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. Dr. McKenzie has been active in organized dentistry since dental school, and he's a past national president of ASDA. He is a founding member of the Coalition for Modernizing Dental Licensure, and he currently serves as a member of the ADA Council on Membership, CODA site visitor for dental anesthesiology, as well as the Pennsylvania Dental Association's Board of Trustees Membership Committee New Dentist Committee. He was recognized for his contributions with the ADA's 10 Under 10 Award in 2025. And as a full-time faculty member, he enjoys training the next generation of dentists and dental anesthesiologists. So I'm now going to go ahead and turn it over to Craig to lead us through tonight's presentation. Take it away, Craig.
Wonderful. And thanks so much, Kylie, for that very kind introduction. And thanks to each and every one of you for taking some time out of your really busy dental school schedule. I remember just a couple years ago being in your position, and the nights are precious. So thanks so much for spending your time with me and for devoting your time to ASDA. Like was shared in the introduction, today we're really going to be talking about leadership styles and some key strategies to help you effectively lead your chapter by harnessing the power of EQ, or the emotional quotient. We'll talk about what that means later in this presentation. We'll also identify some key elements of high-performing teams, and then, of course, even the best performing teams and the best leaders come among some dysfunctions as well. So hopefully we'll come away with some strategies to help solve some of those common dysfunctions as well. Without any further delay, let's start off with discussing tonight the different leadership styles and when to use them. So I'd like to introduce the situational leadership model to you all tonight, and this was put together by the Center for Leadership Studies. After tonight's presentation, I highly encourage everyone to take a look online at their leadership development resources and learn more about the situational leadership model. The key point behind this idea of situational leadership is that leadership styles aren't stagnant. No one leader has a fixed leadership style because situations are dynamic, teams are dynamic. So therefore, the relationship between leaders and team members, or I'm going to use the term leaders and followers tonight a lot, that relationship's dynamic too, and often dependent on the situation. So therefore, we have to have, in this model, 4 distinct leadership styles where we can be flexible. Depending on the team that we're working with, the followers that are a part of our team, as well as what we're trying to accomplish, what the different situation might be. So this model can be explained through 2 basic ideas. We've got task behavior on the x-axis, And task behavior is the extent of which a leader is telling the what, the how, the when, and when something is done. On the other hand, on the y-axis, we have supportive behavior. And supportive behavior, these are the extent of development through open dialogue, as well as reinforcement, like positive reinforcement, building relationships, you might think of. So looking through the task and at the team that you have with you, you can use tonight's presentation on leadership styles to determine how much task behavior is required and how much supportive behavior is required to figure out what leadership style best fits every situation. So let's look at these 4 leadership styles a little bit more in depth and hopefully begin to identify some situations home at your ASDA chapter when some of these leadership styles may be most appropriate. So let's take a look at style 1 or S1. And the S1 style offers low support, low like relationship support, and high direction. It can also be described as telling, directing, or guiding. So again, we've got our low supportive behavior and really high directive behavior. In the S1 style of leadership, the leader makes all the decisions and closely supervises the execution of the task. This is a short-term approach intended to create movement. So anytime the outcome is really important and you as the leader want to ensure that the outcome looks exactly how you imagine it, or anytime there's a short deadline, stagnation, or when a follower has, and again, follower or team member has limited experience. So an example that I can think of when the S1 model of leadership, or the telling style of leadership is, maybe when you're working on a lunch and learn, and maybe you have a D1 or a D2 that's helping plan a lunch and learn for the first time. And they might not have a lot of experience. So they need a lot of guidance, high amounts of direction. And it's a single event. So, it's a quick turnaround to get one event scheduled, and the outcome matters, right? This is how your chapter builds relationships with vendors. It's how your chapter makes money. So the outcome of planning this lunch and learn is very important. But the team that you're working with, your followers, don't have a lot of experience in this example. So you might say something to your team like, okay, let's make sure you're pointed in the right direction on this. Here's a sequence of steps that I want you to take. So you're very prescriptive in giving step-by-step instructions. And you can say something like, we'll review in detail each step as we move forward, but don't worry, I'm going to be there every step of the way in case anything comes up that you might need help with. So it's very prescriptive. It ensures that the outcome that needs to occur happens since you're retaining the most control. And you're not providing a lot of support. You're really just providing step 1, step 2, step 3. So hopefully not many times we're running into the telling style of leadership home at our ASDA chapters, but maybe you can think of 1 or 2 examples like the one I shared, where telling, the S1 style, might be most helpful. But now that we've discussed S1, the telling, let's talk about some higher supportive behavior styles of leadership where I think we're going to find more of our time spent in when we're leading an ASDA chapter. So style 2, or the S2 leadership style, is selling. It offers high supportive behavior and high task behavior direction. It can also be described as coaching or explaining. So in this leadership style, the leader still makes all of the key decisions. So the outcome is still very important. You want to make sure that what you're envisioning as a leader is exactly what's executed. However, while the leader, again, is providing the background and context, they're engaging with the follower to reinforce buy-in behind what the leader's, again, selling to their team, ensuring continued progress. The leader allows for and supports open dialogue, but again, retains those key decision-making aspects to ensure that the outcome has, again, high control and high predictability for what that outcome is going to look like. The leader is going to approach this style with a coaching mindset to grow leaders with potential, but might have limited experience. So again, we're thinking a lot of those D1 leaders, brand new to ASDA, bright-eyed and eager to get involved, but again, might not have the experience, say, from like event planning in undergrad or their ASDA experience from dental school. So we're again hoping to um, grow these followers into future leaders within the organization. Again, this style creates buy-in and a sense of understanding amongst team members. So an example that I can think of here, and hopefully you can think of many more examples of when you might want to use the selling style, but I was thinking, maybe you're planning something like a light and loop fair in the fall. I think that's coming up within a couple weeks, new D1s on campus, setting up a light and loop fair as another source of fundraising for your chapter. Or maybe you're putting together a vendor fair in the spring and you have this new D1, D2 leader who wants to get involved, but again, doesn't have much experience, but exhibits a lot of potential and desire to learn. So here you might want to say, hey, I wish everyone worked as hard as you do and with just as much passion and enthusiasm. And it won't be long until you're running events like this for ASDA on your very own. But for now, I want to work with you side by side and make sure you're comfortable with each step. Does that sound okay? So it's a lot less prescriptive as style number one. There's a lot of side by side working with you, but still ensuring that you're following with each step. And I love that phrase at the end. Does that sound okay with you? Keep in mind, we are working with volunteer leaders and volunteer team members in ASDA. So that check-in of, hey, does that sound okay, creates that sense of buy-in and that idea that, yeah, let's move along with this together. So I really love this S2 style for ASDA, especially for those earlier leaders, those new leaders within the organization that still need some selling and some hand-holding as they're putting together these events where, again, the outcome matters. That's where selling is really helpful. All right, so now that we've talked about the two with really high task behavior, the selling with S2 and the telling with S1, let's talk about what we can use with some of our more experienced members in the S3 and S4. These are going to have lower task behavior. So let's first talk about the S3 style of leadership. In this style of leadership, support is still high, like in the S2 style, but now we're allowing for a little bit more creative direction. It's less prescriptive. There is low task behavior, low sense of direction. This style of leadership can also be described as participating, collaborating, or facilitating. So here, while S1 and S2 communication was very top down, very leader telling follower what they need to do, S3 style is where that kind of changes. And here we see communication flowing from the follower to the leader. The source of creativity and idea generation comes from the follower and works its way up the pyramid to the leader. And when I say leader, think like, executive committee back at your chapter. So here, the follower is making all of the key decisions. They have full creative control with support from their leader in an effort to start to instill task mastery. It's best to start using this style when you have followers that have the knowledge and ability. Maybe they were a committee member in the past and they're now a chair of a committee. Maybe they had some experience with event planning, more advocacy in undergrad or prior to dental school, and there's some translatable skills, but maybe they lack some confidence and need some coaching here. So maybe back at your ASDA chapter, maybe you'll find yourself in this situation this time of year where you have a new chair of your chapter's ASDA Fever Week Planning Committee, who maybe they were a committee member last year and they helped plan last year's Fever Week, but they're feeling a little unsure. They're in this new leadership role. They're chairing a committee, and they need to make some decisions and put this event together. So I think a great line here is, hey, I've noticed that you might have some concern about planning ASDA Fever Week. Can we talk about why you might not feel comfortable taking the lead on this project? I know the committee and executive board trust your expertise. How can I support you? So keys here are, I know the committee and executive board trust your expertise. I really like that line because it's empowering. And it's ensuring that, hey, you trust that, hey, I love your creative ideas behind this. I really want you to put your spin on it. We know that the outcome's going to be great, regardless of what it looks like. And then again, I love that question of how can I support you? When you don't know what to do, when you get stuck in a situation, always feel free to ask a question and get more information without assuming how people on your team are feeling. So I think, you know, providing that feedback of, hey, you've got the expertise, but then coupling that with a question of, but hey, I'm here to support you. What does that look like? Really helps us thrive in that S3 style of high support and low direction. Again, the S3 and S4, we've got more experienced leaders at this point. Outcome doesn't necessarily matter as much. It doesn't have to look exactly like this. The outcome isn't rigid, but we have a little bit more creative flexibility. So that's where creativity really thrives, is in style 3 and style 4. So I think I've already alluded to it. Style 4 is very similar to style 3, but we take a little bit of a step back as a leader, and this is truly delegation. So the S4 style of leadership is low support. So again, low supportive behavior, and there's also low direction or low task behavior. It can be described, like I said, as delegating, or you can think about it as empowering or monitoring. You're, just kind of keeping your pulse on things and seeing how things are going with check-ins that are led by the follower or by the team member. So in this style, the follower is, really implicitly trusted to not only make task-related decisions, but also to suggest strategies for improvement and identify best practices. These are your really high-performing team members that can be trusted with delegation. Just like in S3, communication is still flowing from follower to leader, and this style of leadership promotes and enhances task mastery and autonomy that started to develop in that S3 or participating style of leadership. It's best used with followers that have experience and confidence. When the exact outcome doesn't matter, we don't need to get into this like rigid box of what the outcome looks like, allowing for a lot of creative vision. And this is where creativity really thrives. And I love this for chapters because this is when those really cool ideas for Gold Crown come out. Is when you let somebody with experience come up with new things, and you're not just rehashing the same events over and over. It's where really cool stuff happens. So perhaps an example here is with an experienced wellness committee chair. Previously, maybe they've been on the committee, maybe they were involved in wellness events in undergrad and prior to dental school, and the chapter wants to have some wellness events, but the exact wellness events don't need to be prescriptive. So here you can give the chair and the committee a lot of creative control and completely delegate that area of the chapter and what wellness at ASDA looks like to them. So I think style 4 is a really cool style, but again, I want to share that these are 4 distinct styles depending on the performance readiness of your team or of the followers within your chapter. So not everyone is ready for that delegation, but maybe some people are ready to jump into that R2, R3 leadership, depending if they have less experience and they're in that R2 level of readiness, or maybe they have more experience, but they just need some confidence. And that's where our R3 readiness comes in. So to summarize the leadership styles and when to know in what strategy, let's start on the right-hand side of our screen here with the S1 leadership style. And again, this is best used with low performance readiness or R1 readiness. When a follower is unable, insecure, unwilling, and when the outcome matters, then there needs to be a high level of leader direction and kind of less weight on the people and the relationship side of things. Again, hopefully we're not spending a lot of time in our S1 leadership style within ASDA, but it's important to know when it's appropriate to use. And then let's take a look at our R2 readiness. And this is, again, best used with the S2 or the selling leadership style, where we have participants who are unable, maybe they don't have as much experience, they're new to the chapter, they're learning what ASDA is, but they're confident and willing and they want to learn. Remember, S1 and S2 styles are leader directed and communication is flowing from leader to follower. Whereas on the left-hand side of our screen with higher performance readiness, R3 and R4, communication's flowing the other way from follower up to the leader. So in R3, performance readiness here looks like they are able, so they have a lot of experience, but maybe they're insecure or unwilling and need a little bit more coaching. And then R4 finally is our high performance readiness. And those are our participants, our team members, or our followers that can really be delegated to and trusted to come up with a cool event or something engaging for your ASDA chapter back on its own. One last thing that I want to discuss within leadership styles before we move on to some qualities of high-performing teams are just talking about balancing results versus people. And this goes back to that idea of, remember, ASDA is a volunteer organization and our relationships matter. It's not just 4 years within dental school and 4 years within ASDA, but this really is a small profession where you'll stay in touch with people lifelong through your involvement in organized dentistry. So relationships do matter to help avoid burnout. So make sure you keep the people aspect in mind. Ask yourself, how important are the results? Versus how important is keeping your team happy. So of course we want to be results oriented. We want great events. We want to engage our chapter. But we also want to keep our relationships in mind as well. So it's a natural leadership balance between good results, but also maintaining strong relationships back at home in our chapters. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about which leadership style is most important for the situation. So before we move on and talk about EQ, I'd like to hear from you. So using our chat function here, I want you to take a couple moments and first in your mind, think about that leader in your life. Maybe it was a leader at your ASDA chapter, a leader at your dental school, or maybe a leader in your local community organization or back in college. And I want you to think about that leader and write down in the chat box 2 or 3 qualities that leader was, exemplified that made that leader really effective. So just take a couple moments here and then write down a couple qualities that you find to be very important in a successful leader. And let's take about, 30 seconds here. Awesome. So I see accountability, clear expectations. I love that. Approachable, a good listener. Compassionate, responsible. I see compassion again. Open-mindedness, communication, that's a big one. The ability to see the path to the goal and find the individual that can accomplish it. A role model, trustworthy, vulnerable, good communication. Again, that's 2 votes for communication. Wonderful. We're seeing confidence, open-minded to new perspectives, compassionate, dependability, wonderful. I love seeing all of those in the chat. And I think if we think about a lot of those, when we think about this idea of EQ versus IQ, I think a lot of what we're putting in the chat here, it's really important to note that a lot of that is the EQ, our emotional side of leadership, rather than our IQ, which is our intelligence side of leadership. Of course, and I don't want to diminish this, of course, it's important that good leaders have strong technical skills, good critical thinking skills, and they have the knowledge to be successful. But a lot of what you all were sharing in the chat, which I think is really important, was that ability to work with a team and to work with people and to be good at engaging those around you. So, those ideas of communication, being a role model, trustworthy, vulnerable, all of those ideas fall within what we call an EQ, or the emotional quotient. So let's talk about these 4 elements of EQ. So we have 2 elements that are kind of self elements, and then 2 elements that are more team and surrounding elements. So we have self-awareness and self-management. And then when we talk about that team aspect, we have social awareness and relationship management. Again, a lot of these ideas are just different words for everything you dropped in the chat. So again, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts there. Let's take a look at these 4 components, core components of EQ, a little bit closer and how we can assess them within ourselves. So the first one is looking inwardly at ourselves, and at our self-awareness. So for self-awareness, most people think that they're self-aware, right? There was a study done, and 95% of respondents think that they were self-aware. But when you ask those people's peers, when you ask those people's team members, their followers, when you ask other observers around them, as well as the leaders that they work under, only 10 to 15% actually were when you looked at this one study. Pretty interesting how there's this mismatch of, how people think that they're self-aware when only, a few people actually are. So some really cool ways that you can work on self-awareness within yourself is by doing a 360-degree assessment. They do this within the military, Fortune 500 companies, and there's websites that you can put together a 360 assessment and anonymously send out links to leaders that you work with, peers that surround you, and then followers, team members that work on teams that you lead, to ask a couple of key questions. And then you fill out this same survey, and it gives you an idea about your self-assessment. The whole idea of 360 is that, you're presenting yourself similarly to leaders that you work under, peers that you work around, and followers that work on your team. So I think a 360-degree assessment, whether it's formal or informal, is a good idea just to have a pulse on how others perceive you, and understanding, is this similar to how I perceive myself? Pretty important to know how we recognize our emotions and the way that we present ourselves, because it has effects on other people. So self-awareness is something that we can control, but we want to make sure that how we view ourselves is also similar to how those around us are viewing us. So a 360-degree assessment is a great way to figure that out. Good leaders have great self-awareness. Good leaders also have good self-management and can remain calm even in stressful situations. And, I know not nobody's cameras are on right now, really, except for me, but, raise your hand if you've had, one of those, uh-oh moments when, maybe you've lost control of your emotions, conversations got heated. Yeah, I'll raise my hand, right? And hopefully some of you at home are sitting there being like, yeah, I have too. But good leaders are able to maintain their emotions, maintain composure, and keep a positive outlook even when there's some sort of stressful situations. And I see some of you raising your figurative hand over Zoom. Thanks for joining me in this conversation. Good leaders can keep their impulses in check. And I want to just give you some strategies to kind of help manage stress. Because, after a really long day in clinic or a really long day drilling plastic teeth in pre-clinic, very stressful on top of all of the didactic coursework that you're going through in dental school, well, then you're staying after and you're contributing to your profession through your participation in ASDA. So of course you have the stress that you're bringing with you, and then the stress of event planning and the stress of putting together different things for your chapter. So to manage stress, when conversations get heated, take a break. Take a walk around the block, walk outside for some fresh air. Remind yourself what the sun looks like. You might forget what it looks like, especially in like November, December, and you're working in the clinic all day. Call a friend, call a third party that you trust to kind of share your perspective and just cool off and vent, if you will, prior to re-engaging with the team. And finally, this is so easy to do over email. To get, really hot and full of your emotions over email, because, there's not really much feedback, right? No, you can't get in like instant trouble for how you behave over email. But I'm sure everybody here has also sent that email, and 30 minutes later, you're like, man, I wish I could recall that. I would have phrased that differently. So think before sending. Maybe write up the email that you really want to write up, without putting anybody in the to line, and letting that sit in your drafts for a couple of hours, taking that walk, calling the friend, and returning to that email and being like, okay, how can we phrase this a little bit more professionally, understanding that we're talking person to person here so that we can have a beneficial conversation that benefits the team. So now that we've looked inwardly at ourselves, let's take a look at how we interact with others. So let's talk about social awareness. So social awareness is having empathy. It's being able to recognize others' emotions and the dynamics at play. And good leaders practice empathy. They have great social awareness. They understand how other people are feeling, and they frequently ask for other people's perspectives to ensure that every team member is involved. When you look at leadership studies across the board, empathy is consistently ranked as the #1 skill for a leader to have. And then finally, let's talk about relationship management. So we talked a lot about relationships in the first portion of our presentation when we talked about leadership styles, where we have to manage the relationship versus the result. Well, let's think here about relationship management and how we can influence, coach, and mentor others. But it's also important how we resolve conflict. I'm sure we've all been on teams where we allow conflict to boil and fester, and conflict doesn't get any better. So sometimes we've got to have these crucial conversations because conflict can really waste a ton of time within a team, and it festers and just does not get better. So sometimes we've got to have really uncomfortable conversations. And the book that I really like that has helped me have some of these really difficult, uncomfortable conversations is Crucial Conversations that you see here on your screen. By Carrie Patterson. So I recommend you take a look at this book if you're struggling to have some of those really awkward one-on-one conversations to address key problems before they get bigger. So now that we've talked about different styles of leadership and EQ versus IQ, let's quickly take a look at the elements of high-performing teams, and then we'll end tonight by talking about some common dysfunctions of a team and how you can manage them. So the 5 elements of high-performing teams are trust, communication, some collective goals that we can all agree upon, engagement, and then finally defined roles and responsibilities. So I want to hear from you. Other than those 5 things, what makes a team successful? Go ahead and let's take 30 seconds there. And other than those 5 elements, or maybe it's part of those 5 elements, what are some elements of teams that you've worked with that have been really helpful? So first we talked about the individual, the characteristics of a leader. Now let's talk about characteristics of a team. Shared values, good. So kind of the idea behind collective goals, camaraderie, excellent. Motivation, that's a big one. Trust, ability to listen, so communication. Accountability, yeah. That one's really hard. Sometimes saying, yeah, I'm going to take accountability for this, and this is how we're going to change things moving forward. Pulling your own weight, right? That's great. Being a real team player there, being supportive and collaborative, similar goals and aspirations. Excellent. Thanks so much for everyone sharing, and feel free to continue sharing in the chat. I love seeing your ideas. That's great. So I got a little excited and I shared you my 5 elements of high performing teams. But how cool that a lot of our ideas between those on the chat and the ideas that I'm sharing with you tonight, a lot of them are very similar, right? So this comes from Forbes magazine and the 5 key characteristics of high performing teams. So let's first talk about trust, because trust, there's 3 elements here, and trust is the extent to which leaders walk their talk and do what they say they're going to do. And team members rate a leader high in trust if they act as a role model and set a good example. They walk the talk, or as I think somebody shared in the chat said, they pull their weight, honor commitments and keep their promises, like accountability. We talked about that. Follow through on commitments and are willing to go above and beyond when things just need to get done. So this is all about relationships, consistency, and good judgment. So let's talk first about positive relationships, one of the key elements to trust. So this is all talking about, let's, stay in touch with each other so that we can understand the ideas and concerns for others. We want to balance the results with the concern for others, generate cooperation between people on our teams, resolve conflict, and give honest feedback in a helpful way. And again, I want to drive home this key point of it's important to resolve conflict early on so that things don't fester and get worse. The second element of trust is good judgment, and this is the extent to which a leader is well-informed and knowledgeable. They must understand the technical aspects of the work, so they have to still have that IQ, as well as have a depth of experience and expertise. This means they use good judgment when making decisions, and team members trust their ideas and opinion, and often they are seeking that leader for their expert opinion. This allows the leader to anticipate and then quickly resolve to problems. And then finally, consistency. And this is the do what you say what you mean, follow through consistently. Simply acknowledging the issue isn't enough, participating isn't enough, but rather high-performing teams have people that walk the talk, honor commitments, and keep promises. follow through, and again, are willing to go above and beyond when something needs to get done. And while there might be three elements to trust, it's really interesting that one of these elements is more important than the other. Just good relationships alone are better if you look numerically at good judgment and consistency. So keep in mind the way that you work with people and how you get your team together and build that camaraderie that was shared in the chat. Good relationships are the key element to building trust, and trust is the foundation of a high-performing team. So now that we've really spent some time talking about trust, let's talk about communication, because successful chapter leaders will know how and when to communicate. And I like to think of this as kind of a communication pyramid. And we, at the very bottom, we have what we are inundated by on a day-to-day basis. Man, we get a lot of text messages, right? Probably 100 plus text messages a day. And this is the stuff down at the bottom of the pyramid here is for routine, efficient communication, but there's low touch. There's not a lot of meaning behind a text message. There's no emotion. There's not immediate response. It's for decisions that, are less important. If we're going to be sending a text message. An email is a little bit more formal, but again, you can't really feel the emotion behind an email message, and there's not that ability to respond quickly, but it's a little bit more formal, a little less casual than just a text message. At the very top of our communication pyramid, we have less and less of these interactions, and these are those in-person meetings, right? But I'm sure we've all sat through meetings where we're like, man, this could have been conveyed through an email. So it's important that we keep in-person meetings for only the difficult conversations or the big conversations where the outcome matters. This is high touch point. It's face-to-face. We can see people's emotions. We can read into facial expressions and nonverbal communication cues. You can get some of that captured through Zoom, like we're doing tonight. Not all of that is lost through a video call. And if you can't do a video call, but still need to have an important conversation that can't wait, pick up your phone, pick up your phone and make that phone call so that you can at least hear a person's inflection and emotion in their voice. So it's not as cold as receiving an email about like a big important thing or something like that. I always like to relate this back to relationships. Hopefully nobody's ever dumping anyone over text message or email. That's an important, difficult conversation. Those important, difficult conversations you're going to have in person, and at very least by having that phone call. Strong teams also have defined roles and responsibilities. So this should be outlined pretty well within your bylaws. But I hate to break it to you, not every member at your ASDA chapter is reading your bylaws and understands their defined roles and responsibilities. So it's important that you have a conversation with every member on their team, outlining what their job description is and what their roles and responsibilities and expectations are for working on that team this year. And keep in mind, we have our executive committee that's going to maintain that executive oversight and that big picture of where the ASDA chapter is going to be moving. But then you've got all of your small committees and subcommittees and work groups that are going to work together with that executive committee and create cohesiveness within the chapter so that there's really one chapter moving forward rather than committees working in completely different directions. So our collective goals are the next thing that I want to talk about. You've got to have group buy-in in order to have a high-performing team. When each team member has their own responsibilities, everyone's working towards a collective goal. And the individual work is going to contribute towards the project's overall success. So high-performing teams aren't afraid to pitch in, help each other out until all goals are met. But when you're putting together these goals, especially like a strategic plan or your goals for the year, you want to make sure you're doing this with key members of the teams that you have buy-in so that there's some incentive. We talked about like incentive in the chat here. This is how you create incentive is when you have people contribute to the goals. When you put together your goals, your strategic plan, you want to make sure that all of these goals are smart. And I'm sure everybody on this call has heard about SMART goals. You want to make sure that each of your goals are specific and measurable so that you can have you can look at the key performance indicators, your KPIs. You want to make sure that they're achievable. I love a big, fat, lofty goal, and maybe have one of those because it allows you to shoot for the stars. But most of the goals that you have within your chapter should be attainable or achievable. You want to make sure it's relevant. So are your goals lining up with the mission of ASDA? And finally, you want to put some timelines on these things. Don't just say, oh, by the end of the year, we're going to do this. But maybe, if we want to have, 50, or no, 50 vendors is crazy for a vendor fair. But maybe if we're saying, like 20 vendors for your upcoming vendor fair in the spring, maybe recruit 10 by this date, 15 by this date, 20 by this date, et cetera, so that you have incremental check-ins, so you're not kind of chasing the goalpost at the very end of the year. So now that we've talked about some elements of high-performing teams and goals specifically, take a moment to write at least one SMART goal for your chapter and share it with us in the chat. I'm really excited to hear about some goals that you have for your chapter this coming year. And I think this is a key time to, maybe get out your pen and paper, or, we're all in front of our computers, and maybe write down some goals. Maybe this is a great idea for some idea sharing that you can bring back to your chapter. I'm just going to go back to that SMART goal slide real quick, because I want that to be in front of you as you think of one goal for your chapter this year, ensuring that it's specific, measurable, achievable, or attainable, relative, and timely. So I'll give us like 30 seconds here for you to drop a goal in the chat. Oh, I'm starting to see some great ideas here. So I'm seeing increase our membership by expanding and bringing new exciting membership events and being more active on social media. Great. So pretty specific there. It's measurable. You can look at, engagement on social media, members coming to your events, very relevant and achievable. And then make sure you just have something like time specific in there by, maybe by December or something like that. Fundraise enough to have chapter retreat by the end of the year. Great. So, shorter but very specific. You want to have your chapter retreat, so you need to fundraise enough, maybe put a dollar amount in there, and then definitely time bound by the end of the year. Excellent. Thanks so much. Two different campuses at Mosda, that can be challenging. So you want to bridge the gap and unite your members together and increase member engagement. I love that. Create more opportunities for community service by the end of the year by partnering with multiple organizations to get our members out in the community. Thanks so much for sharing. And then last one I'll read here, but please feel free to keep sharing your goals in the chat so that you can learn from each other as chapter leaders. And so I see increased chapter engagement from our first year student through Big Little mentorship. Oh, I love that idea of a mentorship program and first year engagement activities. That's awesome. ASDA Fever starts at first year. Oh, and I'm just going to read this one because there's numbers in there, and I'm anesthesia. I love math. So I'm seeing Iowa ASDA wants to host a welcome back cookout, so very specific. September 7th, so we've got our time, 100 students, so it's very measurable, but pretty achievable for students, faculty, and residents to attend. I love that. And I really like that engagement, not just with the ASDA student, but also creating buy-in with faculty and administrators, as well as residents. So really getting that whole dental school community together. Thanks so much for sharing your goals. And again, keep those going in the comments. All right. So now that we've talked about elements of high-performing teams, even the highest performing teams are going to have road bumps. It's going to happen this year as you undergo and continue through your leadership journey within your chapter. So I want to talk about 5 common dysfunctions of a team, but more importantly, how do we overcome them? How do we overcome that speed bump so it doesn't completely derail our year of ASDA Fever? So the 5 common dysfunctions of a team are absence of trust. I think that makes a lot of sense. You're going to see a couple of, elements of high-performing teams, and then we lose the trust, right? So there's a common dysfunction of a team: fear of conflict, lack of commitment, avoidance of accountability, and inattention to results. Man, all right, how do we overcome those? All right, so first let's talk about absence of trust. So I think it's pretty easy to identify an absence of trust. It's when people get really quiet, or they, start just agreeing with everything. And I think the first thing to do is ask for feedback, genuine feedback. Take a step back If you're standing up on a podium or putting yourself in a physically like leadership position, maybe get down on the level of those that you're working with. Sit down at the table instead of standing at the whiteboard. Sit down at the audience and create a circle rather than people staring up at you and listening to your plan. And really ask for feedback. Hey guys, how do you think this plan is going? What changes would you make? What opportunities do you see for improvement here? And give the benefit of the doubt. Understand that people come from different backgrounds and have different perspectives because of previous experiences. So give each other the benefit of the doubt. Maybe put the mission statement up on the board and just be like, hey, look, everybody around this room wants to improve the lives of dental students and get students involved in organized dentistry. We all agree on that. Maybe we disagree on the way to get there, but at least establishing common ground and giving each other the benefit of the doubt is helpful. Make sure that you appreciate each team member's role. I make sure I lead a clinic here at the university, and I make sure before I leave every day, I say thank you to each and every one of our staff members because I want them to feel appreciated and so that we trust each other as a team. And I think that relates really well back home at your ASDA chapter. And finally, if something has been messed up, maybe we did something wrong, we misled at some point, we made a mistake. Leaders make mistakes. But what's important is that we offer an apology, or on the other hand, we accept an apology where it's appropriate and sincere. Big, bold, underline down there when appropriate. You don't want to give a fake apology because that's just going to perpetuate the absence of trust. All right, fear of conflict. So this relates to absence of trust. We want to make sure that we listen to all ideas of the team. A strategy that I love for this is get index cards or pieces of paper and write down an idea anonymously and then pass that around the circle and keep writing down ideas so that it's anonymous, it's an idea generator, but we're not concerned about, oh, are other people going to think I have like a, weird idea, or am I going to, create conflict if I propose something new and radical, but maybe really creative? So writing something down and then passing it along until that paper returns to you is a great idea to generate ideas and eliminating the fear of conflict. If conflict does arise, again, keeping in mind that book, Crucial Conversations, you want to solve real problems quickly. Ideas that fester only get worse, they don't get better. I love this idea of praise in public and reprimand in private. So if somebody on your team messes up and does something they're not supposed to, no big deal, but pull them aside, talk to them after the meeting, and ensure that you give clear feedback and expectations moving forward in private. It can be very embarrassing and disheartening to receive reprimand in public. But you do want to praise people that are doing really well and going above and beyond, and do that in public. Do those at those big general body meetings because that makes people feel really good and only encourages others on a team to do really well. Keep in mind that that communication pyramid and use high touch communication when it's indicated to eliminate conflict. Pick up that phone, have a team meeting, at the very minimum, a Zoom call or a phone call to get people on the same page so that you can read into the emotions and see some of those non-verbal communication. And then finally, if you have to reset, hit the reset button, bring the team in and say, look, guys, I know this year's been difficult. Let's just start over. Let's start at, the brainstorming stage again. Let's come up with some new goals so that we're all on the same page and reset the team, getting rid of people that might not necessarily be on board with the mission and finding new team members. Lack of commitment. So this is the idea of pulling your own weight that I saw somebody put in the chat. Lack of commitment. So to overcome this, ensure that there's clear directives. And maybe that means that we need to spend some more time in that S1, S2, where we have a lot more hand-holding, a lot more prescriptive setting of priorities and step-by-step treatment of, how things need to be accomplished. Align the team around some common goals. Again, go back to the drawing board, come up with some common goals to establish buy-in. Ensure that everybody on your team, including you, is coachable and is in a learning mindset. And finally, you as the leader should be setting the example here. You should be going above and beyond in everything that you're trying to accomplish. Second to last thing here is avoidance of accountability. So at the end of every meeting, I love putting together a list of action items with who's responsible for them and what the deadline is, so that you clearly establish who's responsible for what and when they're expected to produce a result by. This helps assign responsibility and makes things abundantly clear what the expectations are. In dental school, I think it's really helpful to have co-chairs. for committees or accountability partners. Because things can get really busy in dental school. Maybe you have a bunch of big exams coming up, and if you have like a D2, D3 as like a chair elect, they're both accountable. They're both working with each other, but maybe they don't have the same hectic schedule, and they can still hold each other to the same high standards. You also
Okay.
again want to make sure that you are identifying potential problems early and addressing them early on. All right. Last but not least is envisioning results. So this was back from 2021 when I was on ASDA's Council on Advocacy as our national president. And we put together this really exciting year in review of all of these legislative activities, the collaborations that we had, and member engagement. And we were able to put it together in an infographic and share it on Instagram so that our members could see what we were doing, but also importantly, celebrating the success of everyone on the team. To ensure that you have attention to results and avoid inattention to results, envision that outcome. Eliminate stagnation. Come up with some fresh ideas. Minimize individualistic
Oh,
behavior
these bowls are yours?
and come around a common goal. And finally, like I said before, put these infographics together, have celebrations amongst your team so that you can really celebrate success, maybe like an end of the year barbecue or something like that, and really thank everyone on your team. So with that, I want to thank you all as my team tonight. Thanks again for taking time out of your really busy schedule to join this training opportunity. And at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Kylie. I think we might have a couple minutes for some Q&A, and I hope that you'll drop some questions into the chat so that we can talk about some ideas further.
Yeah, thank you so much, Craig. I know we're kind of coming up on the end of our time together, but you've got Craig here and I'm here too. So if you guys are thinking of any questions, you can unmute and ask, or you're welcome to put something in the chat as well. I'll give you a few minutes if you guys are thinking of anything. It's starting to get late for a lot of people.
For us over here on the East Coast.
Yeah. Anything that anyone is thinking of? Okay. Not seeing any questions. I am going to go ahead and put, Craig, if you want to share your contact information, I'm going to go ahead and share ASDA's contact information. So you all are welcome to take this email down and you can reach out to us anytime at the membership@asdanet.org email. Let's see, we did get one question. How do you recommend delegating around students who may be upperclassmen or hold a previous exec position? Sometimes it feels difficult to have those conversations.
Yeah, so I think upperclassmen are a real great like mentor to committees. So maybe even putting them in a role where you have a committee chair, and maybe that committee chair is a D3, and then if you have a D4 that still wants to be involved, but maybe they're not, maybe they are moving on to other opportunities, and you have D2s, D3s, D1s that you want to really engage at your chapter. Those D4s do have some really valuable information. So I'd say, if you have people that are like past execs that want to get involved, maybe give them a position on a committee and just have that conversation of, hey, we really want to get some new great ideas, some fresh ideas here for our chapter, but would you be willing to mentor and lend a historical perspective by sitting on the committee? So I think that's a great idea to delegate around is kind of a weird word, but still allow them to have some input and be engaged in the chapter, while I think what you're getting at is allowing new students, new leaders, their real chance to shine within the chapter. I think that's a great question. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks for the question too. Okay, well, I think we're going to go ahead and close out tonight. So thanks everyone for participating in tonight's session, for listening and being here, taking this time, as Craig said, out of your busy schedule. So thanks again to Craig for delivering this wonderful presentation on leadership. I love the questions and the responses by you. As we know, relationships are so important. And I'm just going to pop in the chat one more thing about creating relationships, because we want to have relationships with you all too. So you can take down that link there for Calendly in case you want to schedule some time to meet with National ASDA staff on any successes or challenges that your chapter is experiencing. So as you know, your roles are essential to ASDA's success. And as Craig said, you're all volunteers. Your time is at a premium. So again, we really thank you for taking the time to being with us tonight and participating in this session. As we already shared, this program was recorded, so we will share this out with you all. And you'll see here the final slide on your screen is to mark your calendar for the next session on engagement in the Chapter Leadership Academy, and that is September 18th at 7 p.m. So we will have registration information coming about that soon, and then a speed networking session in October. So thank you again, everyone, for your time and attention. We look forward to continuing our work together this year, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful night. Bye-bye, all.